welcome back to Ready Nerd Go. My name's Alex. This is Anko, who's not saying words right now.
It's a strong start today already.
Isn't it great? So this is, folks. This is Graphic Policy's tabletop RPG centric podcast. We have been for the last 9 episodes talking about different facets of tabletop RPGs, and one of the things that we said we were going to do is once we hit, I think it was an arbitrarily chosen 10th episode for some reason.
Nice round number.
Yeah, once we hit like at the 10th episode, and then maybe the 20th, etc., or as it comes up, realistically, let's be honest with, there's not going to be a strict schedule to this. We thought that it might be fun for us to have a significantly less structured episode than normal, and talk about recommendations for folks who are into tabletop RPG, or for folks who would like to get into tabletop RPGs but don't really know what to expect. So we were thinking like different kind of movies to watch to give you an idea as to how they play out, or TV shows, I suppose, because there's at least one that I'm thinking of off the bat.
I've got a
The
couple.
Yeah, good, because I realize now I didn't actually think of any le- leading into this, and this is going to be an interesting one. We're like, hey, there's no no real structure to this because we really just decided to go for it. Now, it that we do expect to have at some point playlist recommendations to talk about. Probably not this episode because we're going to try and keep it focused to one. But again, by the time we're done, who knows what's going to have happened?
Exactly. But
I don't.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that was an awkward silence because I didn't really have anything. Oh, Anko's talking. Wonderful.
yeah. No, I mean, may as well, to jump right in. I mean, there is the obvious recommendation point that didn't used to exist up until relatively recently, because like there's, you know, a decade ago, let's plays online were not a thing. But nowadays, if people are interested, it's not too hard to just like find somebody doing a podcast or a series on RPGs, like an actual RPG campaign, or usually you can get one specific to whatever system you're curious about playing in. So I know, like, even for me, if I'm looking at a system that I've never played before, one thing I'll usually do is go see if, the creator did a let's play for it, because that then you can see, okay, this is the actual creator of the system and this is how they play the game. And it can be a really good way to kind of get your feet wet on what to expect with it.
Now, because I realize that we've mentioned Let's Plays before, and I'm reasonably sure it's a fairly common thing,
Yes.
it's a fairly common term, but if for any reason you're not familiar with what a Let's Play is, it effectively is you're watching people play what you want to watch them play. It could be a video game thing. Maybe you're watching someone play through the Samurai Warriors or Dynasty Warriors games. Maybe you're watching someone play Red Dead Redemption 2, or you're watching people play Dungeons and Dragons. There's no specific limit to what it could be. It's just you're watching other people play. You know what? Before you start to get, it's like, well, why would you want to watch someone play a game? I don't know, Bob. Why do you want to watch someone play football?
Right. It's actually kind of funny that you mentioned Dynasty Warriors as your example, because one of my friends is, unbeknownst to me up until relatively recently, actually fairly famous online for his Dynasty Warriors content. It's like, huh, that's interesting. Like, Capcom has sent him games and stuff, and he's kind of
So we're
weird.
folks. If you're not aware, we're specifically talking about Chris Gildart.
Yeah.
His Dynasty Warriors content is honestly the reason I was thinking of Chris when I said it is just because he's where I first heard the term "Let's Play."
Huh, that makes sense.
And so Chris is on he's on YouTube. He's actually a really good Dynasty Warrior. He's really good in the Dynasty Warriors community. He was at a convention yesterday with his partner. It was actually Friday and Saturday, but primarily yesterday. And I was hoping to have been able to make it over, but just with things going on that are irrelevant to the story, I couldn't. And I realized, hey, Chris is there. I wonder if he'll do me a solid. So I sent him a text and I asked him, and he's like, yeah, no worries. I'll go do that when I have a chance. So I now have, despite not making it to the convention, I still spent $50 on prints because Chris was kind enough to go grab a couple for me from one of the people that I was really hoping to get there and meet. So like I said, Chris is a great guy. If you have a chance, check out his stuff on YouTube. I think his channel is I think it's just his name, and there's going to be a really awkward moment while we're both desperately trying to find out what Chris Gildart's YouTube channel is
Right.
as we're talking. Yeah, it really is just his name. So Gildart is Gildart.
It's like not strictly relevant to what we're talking about today, but if you're at
Well,
all interested, go check
the
it out.
the irony is it kind of is relevant because while we're talking about let's plays and specific media recommendations, there's only so much you can talk about when it comes to watching let's plays of games. If you're looking to get inspired by, and this we will circle back to this, but if you're looking to get inspired by different media things, then you can easily watch uh, or play video games,
Yes.
things like that. So kind of relevant. Chris does a lot more video game content. In fact, that's pretty much all he does, and that's fantastic. Uh, but so yeah, circling back to our original point, and maybe we'll touch on different forms of entertainment down the road. But
Yes.
circling back to our original point, one of the most fun Let's Plays I remember having seen in regards to tabletop RPGs, and folks, you might be well aware of this, and if you're not, I highly recommend you check it out. But it's the Critical Role series.
Yeah,
Critical
they've been kind of the biggest players in the industry alongside Dimension 20 right now.
Exactly, and you can find they actually have comics out as well if you're into that. I obviously am, but I haven't actually read any of the comics because for some reason I just don't read D&D themed comics. Who knew?
I mean, it's kind of the thing where, D&D is very much its own brand of fantasy. Like a lot of people tend to say like, "Oh, D&D is just generic fantasy." It's like, no, we
It's a
consider it generic fantasy because it defined generic fantasy.
that's a really good point. I find it interesting to when people start talking about Tolkien and how well if Tolkien is one of the later things you've read, you're like, man, this seems so familiar. Like he's done A and then this other thing did that too. Like I feel like it's just a copy of this, and this. And like, you realize Tolkien did it first.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's a trope. Like, there's a reason Lord of the Rings is full of tropes. Is because that's where it became popular. This is the origin of so many of the tropes we have.
Like, a lot of places have taken them off into wildly different directions, but most modern fantasy is derived either from like Tolkien or from like Conan.
Yeah, and I think some of the best books etc. have the tacit acknowledgement that you know what, yes, we are very much a Tolkien inspired, or Tolkien is the reason we do what we do, and Robert E. Howard is the reason we do what we do.
Now, having said that, I also want to push back against the idea that, D&D and Tolkien are the same type of fantasy because they very much are not.
No, they're not. They have the same core concept. I'm not gonna lie, this is not where I thought this was gonna go this episode, but I'm really enjoying it.
Neither.
Um, so yeah, no, Tolkien and D&D have, like you said, similar things. Yes, orcs are a thing, elves are a thing, dwarves and hobbits or halflings as I didn't realize that hobbits are a trademark thing for Tolkien,
Yeah,
which is
that's
why they're
what.
called halflings everywhere else.
Yep, they were. If memory serves, don't quote me on this. If memory serves, they were called hobbits in the first edition of D&D, and then, you know, TSR, who were the people who made D&D before Wizards of the Coast bought it out, were very much, oh, hey, we need to change this so the Tolkien estate doesn't sue the ever-loving shit out of us.
And I think that if they hadn't changed it, they would have been sued,
Oh,
because
100% yes.
it's one of those things where like, oh, we didn't realize this was a thing that we couldn't do. That's fine, but you've changed it, and now you're in a much better state.
Yeah. But yeah, like D&D, like that is a kind of a good point in general. Like D&D, D&D does have its own media spin-offs. Like there are D&D books and a relatively recent D&D movie and some much older D&D movies that you should never watch unless you want to watch a
I
terrible B movie.
I actually think so. The Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie, it is a fantastic example of a game playing out as you're watching, as a
Yes.
neutral observer. Like, you can see almost when the imaginary players roll well on a dice roll, when things just happen to work. When like the scene where you've got the players asking the dead questions, and wait, does that count as a question? Yes. Not you. I'm not talking to you.
it is it is very illustrative of that style of D&D play, which you don't see in much other fantasy because D&D is very much its own genre.
Very much so. And I think it in the other, I would argue, the other popular or common exposure people have to, I hate using the term muggles have to D&D, because I hate bringing
Yeah.
up J.K. Rowling, but unfortunately it is a good descriptor in terms of a lot of people understand what I mean when I say that,
Mhm.
is that a lot of folks would have been exposed to would be Stranger Things, specifically the most recent. I say most recent series. I actually don't know if it's the last one out yet anymore or not, but the point still stands. It's the most recent series that I have seen where Eddie and is playing a D&D campaign throughout the series with the others, and it's a fairly decent illustration of what happens around the table in tense moments, specifically
Mhm.
the scenes when they're at the table. Now, not every table is going to jump up and whisper back and forth about what they're going to do. The game master isn't always going to be as uh, against the players as Eddie seems to be at certain points. Now, he's still clearly wanting them to have fun, but it also isn't going to be as friendly to them as some of the other ones that you might see in real life.
Yeah. But if we're looking like past D&D or D&D adjacent media, hmm, honestly,
Mm.
something that I would say is a really good example of something to take from play would be something like the show Firefly.
I have never watched Firefly, and
I mean,
do you,
Joss Whedon is kind of taboo now, but it's
at
it is
at the
it is
time
probably the height of, his style of show, I would say, where it just you get the feet you really get that style in there, and it's not horrifically bogged down by.
his shit.
Yeah, I mean it.
Yeah,
There's definitely, issues you can have with the show, like the whole analog of being Confederate soldiers, but
what?
yeah, the whole thing with how Firefly came around, and this is, secondhand information. It may be wrong, but this is what I've been led to believe.
I I
It,
like the
the
fact we're not afraid to say, hey, this might be wrong, but this is what we think we've heard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you can't admit you're wrong, what are you doing talking? But
Yep.
But the whole like initial concept, because the whole thing with Firefly is like, the main characters are on this ship, and the lead is, he's the survivor of a war where his side was the losing side. And the initial kind of idea was kind of, okay, hey, what if, we showed like something like from like it was based on the Confederate US Civil War, like with the brown coats and the big government coming in to tell people what to do. And it was like, hey, what if we made something like based on that general idea? He Whedon kind of, spun it into its own thing. He just kind of used that as the launching point of like the nucleus of the idea. But the nucleus of the idea was, hey, what if we followed a sci-fi equivalent of, the Confederacy, just without all of the nasty shit that makes the Confederacy what they were, which you can read as whitewashing them, because that has happened a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that is exactly what that. Having never seen it, yes, that's exactly what it would be.
Yeah.
I
Now,
wouldn't
like,
say how. However, I can understand the logic of let's just use it as a, people have lost a war. Now, people have lost wars across history. That's not the only war that people have lost in.
yeah, it's not something. It's like it doesn't really negatively impact the show itself. There are people who take issue with it because of that, and because of Whedon, which is also fair. And there's, you know, very good points about saying that, it can be hang on about this, insensitive towards like sex workers and stuff like that with how some of it's done. But I think a good attempt was made with it, and I'm not gonna, write off the whole show because it's not perfect.
I think that's a very valid thing to say. Like, you don't have to write something off if it wasn't absolutely perfect. There's always going to be something about something that is going
Yeah,
to be problematic to some degree. And as long as you're able to acknowledge that, and it isn't the sole focus, right? Like, yes, there may be issues with thing A that you're watching, but
mm,
if that's not the only reason you're watching it, or there are, it maybe it's a someone just didn't handle it as well as they could have versus, oh no, this is just outright wrong.
yeah.
Then
Same
I
with,
think there are ex-
yeah.
concessions, acceptances, things that you can accept that are may not always be wrong.
No, I mean, heck, while recording, this is Pride Month, and there's a lot of old shows that I'm very fond of that attempted to, do representation well, but because they're old and they may not have really known what they were doing, it's like, hey, this is this is offensive, but like, they were trying their best, and I'm going to give them credit for that, because they weren't, trying to be offensive with it. They were
It,
trying to represent, and just kind of did an iffy job of it.
yeah, and I think that's something that as things carry on, you've got to be more aware of that. Yes, we may not have done a good job with that in that moment, but as long as we can carry on and try and do better,
Yeah,
that's right. That's the for me. That's the key thing is learning from mistakes, even if it wasn't necessarily a mistake. Just, oh hey, we did it this way, all right, but we could have done it better this way and done it better.
exactly. But to circle back around to Firefly as a
Oh
good
shit,
example
yeah.
of RPG media, we warned people we were going to be all over the place this episode, and we are pulling through on that.
It is currently the only thing that seems to have gone to plan.
Yeah, the reason I would say Firefly is a really good example of like media you'd want to watch to get ideas or a feel for tabletop play is because it works really well as an example of what a good campaign would work like, because you have a group of people who are together almost entirely by circumstance, who do clash with each other, but otherwise care about each other in a relatively episodic format that does have kind of a low plot line that, like, continuous plot line that pops up every once in a while, which is just it's a really good example to take for things to watch to kind of give you an idea of, hey, we could do something like this. Because I find one very easy trap that people fall into, especially with recommending media and stuff, is when you get into stuff that has like a giant overarching, like heavily plotted narrative. It's really easy for a GM to look at that and go like, hey, I want to do, like, the next Game of Thrones or something. So they meticulously plot out how they want the story to go. But that's not how tabletop games work. Like, the games are based on the decisions that the players make. Like, you might have a plot line that runs along it, but if you can't adapt to what the players are doing, go write a book.
I think that's surprisingly a very key statement, is that if you can't adapt, then you want to tell your story and have people play the characters that maybe you don't necessarily understand or want to play yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a case of you're just adapting the things as they come up, then you'll want to tell a collaborative story. It's a very fine distinction, and it's why some authors would make terrible GMs and some GMs make terrible authors, because they don't have they don't have people to bounce off of. Hey, thing A happens. What do you do? Well, I don't know what my character would do, says the author. But the GM, I'm like, I don't care what my character would do. I want to know what you idiots are going to do.
Exactly. And I mean, heck, I mean, what we were talking about before we started recording is a good example of that. It's like the adventure I'm running you guys through right now is a fairly old school mega dungeon style. There is like plot and factions and stuff all happening around you, but right now you guys don't really have any exposure to much of it, and you guys are just in there making your own decisions, and those decisions are occasionally having impacts that you guys might not really be aware of at the moment. But I'm not going, okay, you guys are going to go here, you're going to encounter this, and this is going to happen. No, it's, hey, you guys go down, what direction are you going? Oh, you're interacting with these guys? Okay, that's going to affect this.
My favorite thing that you said so far in regards to that is you might not be aware. We're absolutely not aware, because apparently every character being played cannot read, has no innate curiosity beyond a simple thing like my new character, because the other one died.
Mm,
It went for it to find out why the other one died. Well, he found that out and he's like, well, I guess I'll stay and complete that mission. It was a very arbitrary reason to stay at the time.
yeah.
We fleshed it out a bit, but there's absolutely no curiosity from him as what's happening down here. And none of the others seem to have any interest either. And it's actually kind of funny how there is a story and yet no one seems to be aware of or care about it.
Yeah, and it's fine. The whole point of this game was meant as like the filler game when our normal GM can't or doesn't want to run. But it is also just funny for me that you're like, oh, hey, we found this old interesting object. Oh, it must just be a random object placed here and it's just here for us to loot. It's like, nope, there's actually reasons it's here that you guys just are never going to pick up on.
Especially with that attitude.
And especially, I've told you guys outright, like, hey, there's this interesting fact about it, and it's like, oh, that's just flavor. No, it's not just flavor.
That it's
But
got to be frustrating to run a game where almost everyone is there just, oh, we just hit a dungeon delve.
I
And
mean, that's how I'm approaching it, just because I know that's all I'm going to really
get
get
out
out of
of
you
it.
guys with it. And it's like, hey, you know what? That's a perfectly fine way to play the game. And if anything, it means less prep work for me, because I don't need to be as meticulous as making sure everything makes sense, because y'all aren't paying attention anyway.
Well, that's just it. It's like half of us like, wait, how did we get here? It doesn't matter. We'll just go this way. Like, Sure.
It kind of does matter though.
Yeah. It kind of does, but like whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the reason that Firefly kind of comes up as a good example is you guys have kind of done the similar thing where like the first couple of sessions you guys were playing together, there was very much okay, there's no reason for us to actually like care about each other or try to keep each other alive. But now that you've been playing these characters for a couple of sessions, like your characters still very much have disagreements with each other, but there is also that there's the camaraderie starting to build up now of like, oh hey, we need to actually look out for each other and keep each other alive as we're existing here.
Yeah. For example, and I realize this was a media recommendation episode, and this is now we're just talking about whatever, and I'm fine with that. The latest session we had in that game, the character who initially ran off when two of us were in trouble because there's no reason for him to stay, played the vanguard or the rear guard, holding everyone, keeping everyone safe as a massive horde of undead zombies came at them.
Exactly.
My character, who they don't seem to realize is actually a necromancer, just cast hide from undead and walked casually along with the zombies as they were trying to kill yours, doing absolutely nothing to help.
Yeah, because that's your character is one of the newest to the group, and he's like, yeah, I have no reason to care about these people right now.
I just need to get out.
Yeah, I nearly died the last time I went down here. I'm not too keen to do that again.
Yeah,
Y-
exactly.
You guys will
So
be fine. I'll see you at the entrance.
we'll see in a bit. I actually read a book recently with a really interesting necromancer character, and it's going to be of no surprise to anyone that knows me across various things they've listened to, etc. It was by Joe Abercrombie. It's called The Devils. You don't need to have read any of his other stuff. I find it fascinatingly amazing that his 13th novel is called The Devils.
Clever.
And he, but it's it actually reminds me very much of a D&D campaign or an RPG campaign in that you have a vampire, a werewolf, a there's going to be minor spoilers for some of the characters. So you have a rogue, a monk, a thief who's somehow something more than that she doesn't want to be, and you have a knight. There's absolutely no reason for any of these characters to be there other than the fact they have to be there in the story. And there are moments where you can clearly see the werewolf is also a Viking and doesn't want to let the wolf loose. And it's very much oh god, I failed a roll. I'm now going to turn into a werewolf. Everyone should run. Aspect of things. It just happens at the worst possible moments, and sometimes it's the right time. Like they, oh shit, release the werewolf. We need the werewolf. But it's very much oh god, the werewolf's coming out, and like that kind of moment where you have those in a book or in a movie or whatever. It's absolutely brilliant. Now we did say this would be more of a experience, feel like watching media episode than anything else, and we'll
Yeah,
try and at least.
literature
Uh,
counts.
well, I was going to say we could try and at least keep that to the point because there are so many books that you could pull in
No,
for that.
we'll have a literature episode later on because I can definitely think of some good recommendations for reading for
I've
that stuff.
there are so many that I've got as well that you can go through, which will be maybe that I'm gonna say maybe that's episode 20, but realistically it could be whenever the hell we want it to be. So stay tuned.
Exactly. But yeah. If we're sticking strictly to visual media for this episode, they're a good example of something. I mean, there's so many examples of fantasy media out there that you can reference. I mean, even stuff like Avatar: The Last Airbender
I
works.
assume you're talking about the anime and not the movie.
There is no movie.
Valid point, well made.
But and like the if and actually Avatar: The Last Airbender is kind of a good example for that, because while I do prefer the cartoon series, the live action Netflix series, while I don't think is as good, is still, a relatively good adaptation if you happen to be one of those people that are like, oh, I don't watch cartoons. The live action one is right there. It's not as good, but it's still worth your time. And that's still and another good example of, heroes that gather together over the course of a story, following, like, they have their overarching goal, but episode to episode they may be trying to advance that goal, they may be doing something completely unrelated. It's a good, traveling the world, like, and exploring the world together and growing as characters.
Another good, another example.
Maybe not a good example, I'll strike that part out.
Yeah, another example of a tabletop RPG based or a inspiration. No, I was going to talk about the Witcher TV series with Henry Cavill, but there are so many issues with that I don't even want to bring it up. It's it's one of those moments where, look, the first season with when Henry Cavill is actually pretty good, specifically the Henry Cavill parts. After that, it devolves so far from the books that it's like someone's idea of fan fiction as to, hey, maybe this will happen and maybe that'll happen. And if anything, it's actually a really good example as to someone playing a tabletop RPG game based in a world without actually understanding the world and just having things happen because it's cool and or this will be fun, this will be fine. If it doesn't work, we can fix it. No, Lauren, you couldn't fix it.
Which is ironically also a great example of, player expectations, because there's nothing wrong with playing in a world without really understanding it and just doing your own thing. But you need to make sure that everybody on the table is okay with that very loose interpretation, or else the people that do actually care about that setting, are going to be very upset about the changes that you kind of make willy-nilly to it.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a very good point to make, not only across what you're playing in, but also the adaptations made from those things. I
Yeah,
think,
like there's a reason that whenever I do run something like something related to an existing piece of fiction, I'm always very careful to say up front that, hey, like, we're playing in my version of this
mm,
world, because I will always have at least one person who is an obsessive nerd lore about whatever we're playing, which is great,
which
except when they're constantly correcting me about things that we're doing in game, and I have to go, no, man,
no,
that.
this is a world inspired by. We are
Yeah,
going to keep it as close to the canon as we can, but if I differ from it, just accept that I'm differing from it because that's what's going to happen.
yeah, like I will, I will lean on my players who have all of that extra knowledge for setting details if need be, but ultimately, yeah, things will change either for player expediency or just because I'm not going to look through the history of 40K novels to find out exactly what happened to this one character.
Nor should you. Now, the irony to this is that when you are playing a game with someone who is steeped in the lore, I'm going to use when we played a brief Witcher campaign that I had joined before you played a more
Yes,
longer form in the basement.
the GM is the same person I was referring to earlier. Continue.
Yeah, yeah. So I have read all the books, played the games, but I wasn't. I enjoy The Witcher, but I wasn't. I'd never read all the like up about every little thing about the monsters that were in there because I was more interested in killing them and the stories of the characters in the books. I didn't really care about the ins and outs of the difference between a Bruxter and a high vampire. I just knew
Mm.
that there was a difference. One was mindless, one may not be, or vice versa. So when we were playing the game, and I just happened to be playing The Witcher, and he said, "Oh, hey, you know this? What do you know about it?" I'm like, honestly, I don't know what this character is supposed to know. Well, he's a Witcher, etc. I'm like, okay, but I don't know as a player how much I can disseminate based on what I don't already know. Like, do I just make it up? Because
Yeah.
I don't have that info in front of me. Can you not just tell me what I'm supposed to know?
And there are RPG systems where where the response to the question of am I just supposed to make something up is yes. Like, hey,
And
I don't know what I'm supposed to know with this character. Oh, just make up something and then that will be the answer. But
and
if you're
that's
playing in an established world, that gets a lot more tricky.
and honestly, if that would have been fine, that would have been a question I would now know to ask. At the time, I had no idea if that was a thing that could even happen. So
Yeah.
I'm floundering in, I think, one of the first games where I just happened to not be there to react to things. Like, I don't know what I'm meant to say here. Is it like, is a character, like, the character clearly knows more than the player does. How do I get around that? So in the end, my answer is like,
Yeah, and
which
that's
I think frustrated the GM because the Witcher like, uh, and like, yeah, but there's more than you can like. Okay, but I don't know that, and unless you're going to tell me what I'm supposed to say, it's not coming out.
yeah, which is another easy trap to fall into as a GM when you're expecting certain players to do
Hmm.
things for you, and that
Especially
just
when
doesn't happen very often.
no, and especially when you know, like, oh, hey, I know if we're playing this, like, I know Anko is, if I'm, this isn't going to happen, folks. Like, don't expect this. If if Alex is GMing an Avatar: The Last Airbender game, and I'm expecting Enko to do thing A because I expect him to know about thing B, and he doesn't or doesn't remember it, and thing C happens instead, I'm like, why would you go left instead of right when you're walking into a brick wall? Like, that makes no sense to me as a GM, but it makes sense to you as a player because you had, oh, hey, I have an A or B choice. I'm going to choose B. There wasn't a choice. You should have realized that there was the only way you should have gone was A.
Yeah,
And
and
that's what comes from having too much reliance, the GM having too much reliance on players who are aware of the world being able to pick up the subtle hints that are going around. Because you're assuming they're as into the world as you are, or as you want them to be. And it could easily just be someone like, yeah, I watched a movie once. I really enjoyed it. I have a lot of memory. Like, people are often surprised when I say I've only seen most MCU movies once because I just remember things about it. But that doesn't mean I remember every 3 seconds what was happening in the movie. I just remember the gist of things, and I can carry on conversations with people that have seen it 15 times.
yeah,
However, that also means that if there's a very subtle thing you're referring to, and I don't have, and it's never come up somewhere else that I wouldn't have been reminded of, I'm probably not picking that up until I'm given some kind of context clues that I'm looking for. And it's the
and
same with a game. If you're expecting someone to pick up on a context clue that they're not aware that they should be looking for, you're gonna struggle with what you're looking for.
and let's be honest, the MCU movies, most of them are not exactly
A complex thing.
yeah, they're not exactly in-depth plot, so you don't really need to watch them once to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I have a great memory or what I my level of memory should be praised. It's just very much a case of like, oh, you've only seen it once. I only need to see it once. If I really like it, I might watch it again down the road. But
Yeah.
for most things, I've seen them once. The earlier ones, obviously, you've seen more because they were all you had to watch.
Now, having said that, the Avengers movies, like specifically the Avengers movies, are also a pretty good example of media for basing RPG stuff off of because
Well played segue. I enjoy.
because
Um,
that is something that I thought of when you were talking about, you bring up like The Witcher as an example. It's like, for if I want to recommend people media specifically for like getting ideas for RPG play, I want to make sure that for the most part, what I'm recommending them are ensemble shows, because if you're recommending them, like there's things you can do from a story perspective with a single character, like with a single focus character, that you can't do when you have when you have an ensemble cast that you're supposed to care about multiple people that can work together to accomplish goals. Because like Geralt in The Witcher, he doesn't have friends. He has people that spend, like, I mean you can argue like Dandelion and Yennefer, and but like they're not like a adventuring party that is like sticking together throughout the entire time.
They just happen to be together at certain points in the book, and that's just where the book picks up,
Yeah.
right? That maybe there's a common quest toward the end of the books where you've got the Regis, you've got Dandelion, you've got Geralt are together along with a Cahill, who has been butchered in the show, and I refuse to watch season. Anyway, still bitter, Lauren. Now, I'm saying it as if she's listening. Now, to your point, ensemble shows where they actually have a common goal to work toward are really great, give you a really great sense of what it is that you're looking for from media that you can take inspiration from.
Yeah.
And the flip side to that is that maybe there's a game, for example, one of the players in our group is looking to run a game. I don't even know what the name of it is. I just know he's been obsessing over it for the last couple of weeks. It's an action hero based game
Yeah.
where effectively, as long as you've seen some form of action movie, ideally I think from the 80s, but not necessarily, maybe it's more modern, then you're going to have an idea as to how this plays in terms of what's expected in the story. It's just how the actual game mechanics are going to be different, and that's par for the course. Almost every system is going to have some form of unique twist on the roll of the dice to see what happens.
Like there's that's kind of the interesting thing with, you know, having a media recommendation episode to begin with, is because while I stand by what I just said about, you know, ensemble team shows are like the best examples of things to draw from for like plot structure and understanding how groups can or should like get together, work together, stay together, all that kind of stuff. There's also the point of literally anything can be a point of inspiration. Like, you know, go watch plays, go read books, go watch TV shows, go like do live theater. Like there's anything can form inspiration, and you can get inspired by the most absolute random things you can consume, which can lead up to some really interesting things where, you know, you could be sitting here like watching a baking show and suddenly go, hey, you know, make for a really like weird and fun side episode if like there's a baking competition going on and the characters are involved for some reason and have to like hunt down rare ingredients, or they need to like figure out who's sabotaging the other person. Like that's just a really weird episode idea that you won't come up with watching like modern
I
fantasy or anything.
I can give you folks, I can give you a genuine real example of this. There was a session where I think you were actually not there. So there was me, the GM, and two other people, maybe three, but I think there was a very small group, and we ended up getting together just because we were there. Like, well, we'll play. People, I think it was a case of people dropped out last minute, which again, totally fine to do. We were willing to adapt. We happened to be in a point where we could adapt, and it ended up being a, instead of a throwaway line, "Hey, you're going to go to this get together," we decided to play out the what happened at the get together, including a dance contest where the GM was having a great time with, like, all right, so it's gonna be a dance contest. I'm like, okay, well, I've got these stats. Can I use any of them to dance? And he's like, you know what? Why don't we use your combat skills to dance with, to see what happens? So my goblin, who is moderately acrobatic and stealthy, but remarkably violent, was able to win the dance contest by fight dancing. And we thought it was hilarious because it just happened to be working. I was rolling just high enough that his dancing choreography was effectively action movie style fighting where no one's getting hurt, and like, oh, this is ridiculously fun.
I wish I'd been there for that. For that,
It
that would have been great.
it it was one of those moments where like you couldn't. I don't think you could replicate it because it just came about in the way that we wanted to play. We didn't really want to advance the story because there wasn't enough people around to carry,
Mm.
catch it up. But at the same time, we could at the very least try and get some kind of advantage out of. I think that's what. Yeah, we had to go to a get together, and it would have been like a chat with someone. But the GM said, "Hey, instead of a chat, I'm going to make you do all of these things that should take up the playtime or a decent enough chunk that we don't feel that we've wasted, bus fare, snack money, etc., to come down and play." And
Yeah.
honestly, I think there's an argument to be made that if people show up, it's never wasted. You're there to hang out for a bit, but that's an entirely different soppy type emotional thing that we don't need to worry about. But to your point, anything can inspire a game session, especially if it's already in a setting where like, hey, I'm going to throw my D&D characters into this or my Pathfinder characters into this. It might be a bit more awkward to have a cooking style show in the middle of an aliens campaign
Yeah.
where it's more horror based. It could happen, but there would be a lot more ingenuity on behalf of the GM to set that up.
Yeah. And just having a broad base of references to draw from just will make you a better GM and arguably a better player.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like if all you consume is like Tolkien style fantasy or D&D style fantasy, then you won't have that larger reference pool to pull from for character ideas or plot ideas or even just how to react to certain things or ideas of trying to do certain things. Like if all you watch is like, shoot first and ask questions later, the idea of asking questions first might not come up.
Asking questions at all might not come up.
Mm.
We're clearly demonstrating that in the Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign. Now, the flip side to that is I'm actually someone who heavily reads fantasy more than anything else. However, because there's a lot less fantasy movies, I will always prefer a sword based film over anything else. A lot of there's so many different things you can watch in terms of just shows to broaden your horizons that we're not going to touch because to try and do so would be to give you an exhaustive list in like 5-10 minutes of things you should watch would be incredibly arrogant of us.
Hmm.
So anything we have said, feel free. Like obviously, if it strikes your interest, check it out. If we've said if you don't, I don't know if I want to watch Firefly, then don't. Life's too short to watch things you don't care about.
Exactly.
It's
The amount of media recommendations I've got from people where it's like, oh man, you need to watch this. It's like I really don't though.
yeah. I don't need to watch anything, friend. I might watch it, but I might
Okay.
not watch it.
Like I like a, honestly a good example of that is like Andor. I know that if I actually sit down and find the time to watch Andor, I'll probably love it. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. And it's just every time I sit down when I have the time, it's like, you know what? I would rather be doing something else right now.
Yeah,
Eventually, hopefully, I'll get around to it. But that's the nice thing about, a good series is that it's still a good series if you don't watch it right away.
I have a thing where I will often not what like so my Star Wars self-imposed rule for myself is I don't watch or necessarily care about anything that is set prior to the original trilogy.
Hmm.
Not that I don't think that stuff is bad. It's because there is so much things to watch that's just my self-imposed. If it's before then, I might watch it at some point. If it's after The sequel trilogy, I'm probably not going to care because I really didn't enjoy the sequel trilogy ending as much. So if it's after the Return of the Jedi, like The Mandalorian,
Mm,
that's the time period that I really am interested in. I don't really care about what happens after The Force Awakens. I love The Force Awakens. It's a great movie. The same cannot be said for the sequels. I don't necessarily want to or feel the desire to go back to that time period. I'm sure there'll be good stuff coming out of it eventually. Maybe they'll make it, hey, this is what happens to Ray 20 years down the line. Great. Do what you're gonna do. But for myself,
mm.
I don't have the interest. So the
Yeah,
reason I haven't watched
so
Andor,
much potential.
yeah, like the reason I haven't watched Andor is because it's just before the time period that I care about. And that is the only reason I haven't watched it, other than the fact I just don't have time, and I don't find I haven't had time because it's not a priority for me to make time to watch.
Like it's for me, it's like Rogue One is probably one of the only Star Wars things I can truly say I like from the new era, like the Disney era.
Hmm.
And I know Andor kind of has a very similar vibe and overlap. And it's like at some point, I will really enjoy getting into it, but there was so much wasted potential here from the Disney trilogy, just still sits
Yeah,
sour in my mouth.
I think the my issue with Andor, and it has been from the very beginning, is I know how his story ends, and I didn't care enough about the character to find out how it began. I think
Yeah,
that's the difference in why I was willing to give Solo a watch, the this Han Solo movie. I
I still
know
haven't
how
seen it.
Han So I know how Han Solo's story ends, and I was interested enough in the character to see how it began. Now, my issues with Solo the movie are strictly that it's actually a Han Solo movie, and that I it's not that the guy playing Han Solo is bad. It's that it just doesn't seem to align with some of the time frame it's hinted at in the later movies. And if
Oh,
he's like
did
he's
they do?
supposed to be so he's supposed to be a young Han Solo, but Han
Yeah.
Solo can't be much more than 30 in uh A New Hope or the original Star Wars movie. He can't be much more than that. And you get the feeling by the beginning of Solo, he's already in his early to mid 20s, and it just doesn't seem
To line
to.
up.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to have quite the same light. Now, again, if it was anything but a Solo movie, if it was like Sam Holo or something, it would actually be a really good film. Like it's a good film. It's just the things I don't like about it are very nitpicky from my end, and I'm aware of this, and it just doesn't seem to have the same lineup as some of the other stuff, or alignment to the time as some of the other stuff. Again, if you want to watch it, it's probably worth watching. It's just take it as like it just I don't know. There's just something about it that just didn't jive for me when I watched it.
The one of the bigger reasons that I didn't go watch it, and I could entirely be wrong on this because it was just opinion from the commercials, is it felt very much like they did that thing that comes up a lot in prequels where it feels like the character is the character after all of their character development, but it's taking place chronologically before that character development happened. So they like he shouldn't be like, this good, helpful person at this point in his life.
Yeah, that's accurate. Again, it's a good movie. It's just a bad Han Solo movie. He's not supposed to be a good person in this. He can be selfish, etc., but he still seems to want to do stuff for people because of people, and it just doesn't really have the same. I don't know. It just shouldn't be how it's working for him. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we could We could do an entire podcast just about ranting about Star Wars. So let's not.
Yeah, you know what?
Not.
Let's folks. This is very much an episode where Enko and I were just shooting the shit. If you've enjoyed us trying to stay relatively on topic, let us know. Uh, this is the last episode of our current batch of 10, so I think next episode is, now that we're going to get these out on a more consistent schedule. By the time this comes out, it's going to be about this is June 15th. We're recording. I think this is going to come out, and I say I think because we've got episode 8 came out to yesterday.
Mhm.
Episode 9 I think is going to come out at the end of June. So this is going to be mid-July when this one finally comes out. So almost another month. We have been very at this point we're gonna let you know what it is. We've been very subtly running different quotes in the episode titles. If you can tell us where said quotes come from, we will send you something. Once you've figured out where the two quote sources come from, let us know by sending an email to readynerdgo@gmail.com and we'll be in touch. There's gonna be, I think, one or two things we're sending out, so don't be upset if you get to this point in episode 10 like, oh shit, I know where all of those quotes came from, why didn't you send me something? Because we didn't have enough for everyone.
And we are not a well-funded show here.
Not well funded is a marginal understatement. We very much do this for the enjoyment of doing it. So
Exactly.
if you can tell us where it comes from, we will let you know. We will. So episode 10 comes out mid-July. So depending on when we start getting answers in is when we'll actually let you know. But I would expect at some point around episode 15 is probably when the answers coming in will line up with when we're able to record and get it out. So you'll obviously know before that you'll be getting something from us. We don't know what it is yet. We'll figure that out when we know where you are. Because if you're not in Canada, then it's gonna we'll
Be a little
figure it out.
trickier.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But don't it is open to everyone, because at the very least, if it's going to cost us an arm and leg to ship, Amazon's free in whatever country. So we will figure something out.
I mean, we can tell you it'll be RPG related, but that's pretty much the
gist of it. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be RPG related. Maybe it's going to be it's not going to be a supplement to an already existing game, unless said game is D&D, where we can reasonably assume that you've at least got a book for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is neither here nor there. So until that time,
game on.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.